Hello YouTube, welcome to Educated Barbarian episode 15. Still focused on the meditations. We are actually halfway through the book, and after this one, as I pinned in the last video, we're going to start talking about On the Happy Life. But I don't think that the series will be 30 episodes long, because as I said, Marcus Aurelius tends to repeat himself quite a lot, and therefore I will be skipping some of the quotes. But don't let that divert you from your ability to go back and read every single one, because there is wisdom to be found in every single passage. Now, I'm actually going to start this episode with my favorite quote from this book. It is a shame and dishonor that in any man's life the soul should faint from its duty while the body still holds out. This is something that I'm trying to live my life by. As long as the body holds strong, it is cowardly and a complete dishonor to let your spirit give up. As long as the vessel is willing to push forward, you should be too. And in truth, the vessel will continue to push forward because the human body is really resilient. It's really tough to break your body. You can always recover, you can always find ways to keep advancing. But that is going to hinge on the ability of the mind to desire that. I have found that when you want to continue, when you want to heal because you're injured, when you want to stay injury free, that is going to be bulletproofing you because it starts there. And on the side note and on the flip side of that, if you don't, if you give up, if you embrace weakness, if you find excuses, your body will start falling apart on you because the two mirror one another. A strong body creates a strong soul and vice versa, but if the soul and the spirit weakens, the body will as well. So always stay strong, be a trooper, and keep in mind that this body of yours was a gift. It's a gift from the source, it's a gift from your parents, from your ancestors, that you should respect and cherish. And as long as it's willing to do its bidding, it's your duty to continue to do so as well. See to it that you fall not into Caesarism. Avoid that stain, for it may come to you. Guard your simplicity, your goodness, your sincerity, your dignity, your reticence, your love of justice, your piety, your kindliness, your affection for your kin, and your constancy to your duty. A mindset that a lot of people embrace once they start implementing aspects of Stoicism in their life is that they start to feel superior to others. And that is a dangerous step to take because it's actually the step that takes you out of the path of the Stoic. Same for Bushido. If you think that you follow the path of the dead man walking and that it makes you better, man, you just left the path because you have forgotten what it was about. It's not about showing off. It's not about being able to say that you're much wiser than the average person. Of course you are. The average person is an idiot. That's not about that. It's about elevating yourself for the sake of the elevation and then to be able to give back to people, always thinking and believing in your mind that they have the ability to get to your level and above. Stoicism is not something that you reserve for yourself to isolate the soul. It's something that actually helps you share with others because as you practice it, you become a guide. And the guide's goal and role and job is to actually get people to where they need to be. Can you imagine if you went to a foreign country and you saw some guy and you're like, could you guide me to this volcano? And he told you, I know the volcano, I've been there many times, I'm the best guy for this volcano, but I will not share it with you, I will not take you there because you are not versed, you are not worthy. If you don't already know how to get to the volcano, then forget it. That's a worthless guy. This guy has completely forgotten what his job was about. Same for the Stoic. You have to maintain the simplicity. You have to keep believing that you are who you are and nothing more. Okay, you're not special for being able to follow that path. And I think the most important part here is the affection to the kin. It's really tough. I know it's tough. I struggle with that as well. I see the word, I see stupidity, and I think, man, I don't want to work for these people. But it's a toxic mindset to have because in reality, you're focusing on the negative. You're only seeing the negative of the word because negative people tend to be the loudest. In reality, most people are neutral and they are worth it. These people are purely worth it. They're worth your time and your efforts. So always keep that love for your fellow brothers and sisters in your heart. Life is short, and the one fruit of it in this world is a pure mind and unselfish conduct. Agreed. I think that's the end goal of everything. I'm personally a deeply selfish person, meaning that I have a strong tendency to put my needs first, but I've always realized also that this was an unselfish selfishness in a sense, because on other aspects of my life, I am willing to give myself entirely with no counterparts or no payoffs on my side or on my behalf. And I think it's a balance that's easy to strike because we all have things that we are willing to die for. We all have it. Some of it is less dignified to admit, but it's there, it's in you. That's what humans do. Rare is the person who is fully selfish just for the sake of self preservation. Usually it's because you want to be able to be at your fullest and at your max potential to be able to fulfill your true goal in life. So keeping a part of selfishness in your soul is okay, and you have to, on the other side, be fully unselfish at times. That is the balance to strike. Be in all things the disciple of Antonin. Imitate his resolute constancy to rational action, his level equability, his godliness, his serenity of countenance, his sweetness of temper, his contempt of vain glory, his keen attempt to comprehend things. Remember how he never quitted any subject till he had thoroughly examined it and understood it, and how he bore with those who blamed him unjustly, without making any angry retort. He was never in a hurry, he was never discouraged, he never reproached any man. He was free from fear, suspicion, or sophistry. He was content in the matter of house, furniture, dress, food, servants. He was patient of labor and slow to anger. The description of the Stoic, the description of the modern man, at least back in those days, and of someone who should be followed, because it's a good example. And when we're talking about examples, I'm not going to go through that, but I hear that a lot. I hear people say a good example would be that if everyone behaved like you, then the world would be a better place. I agree with that to an extent, but that has its limits. Because of course, if everyone moved in the same direction and did the same thing and behaved the same, one, the world would be extremely boring, and two, we would fall into a different type of negativity in this world, because echoing opinions and a proclivity towards the same lifestyle and qualities creates fault, because it ostracizes people that are outside of that. And there's always a weak spot in that. So what Marcus Aurelius tells you is not to emulate that entirely. It's to look at this list and to pick some things and to study them, okay? So when he was blamed unjustly, he didn't get angry. Okay, that's interesting. He was free from fear. Just that, being free from fear. That could be the enterprise of a lifetime. I'm not free from fear. I have many fears in my life. But I've always recognized that fear never made me better. It always made me worse. And I've also realized, and that's something that you have or will realize eventually, fear is in your head. It's something that you created from scratch. So you can destroy it like this. And it's up to you. Many people are slaves of fear. Never be a slave of anything to start with, but especially not of a slave master that you built in your own head. Try and separate yourself from that. That's one step. That's one thing from that bucket list, but that could take you a very long time. So my advice is don't be too speedy, okay? We're talking about a man who had already mastered a high level of Stoicism. Try to apply that in your life step by step, a tiny bit by tiny bit. Sober yourself. Recall your senses. Shake sleep from you, and I know that it was a dream that troubled you. And now that you are broad awake again, regard the waking word as you did the dream. So continuing on the advice of Marcus Aurelius to take a step back from your problems and things that happen to you in life. I had recently something like this happen to me, and I realized how I was sucked in. I could see myself being just absorbed by the problem, where I pictured it in my mind, where I was like stuck to it. It's not the problem that did that, by the way. It's not the problem that jumped on me. I did that. I approached the problem and I was looking at it like this. Now, if the problem is here and I'm like this, it looks really big. It looks threatening. But what happens if I take a step back? Now it's much smaller, and on top of that, I'm going to realize, hey, that's my own hand. The problem was made up from the start. It never existed. And that's very important. The problem itself doesn't move. It will not jump to you. And I say that, and you might say, okay, but what about life? Like, let's say my house burns. I didn't do that. Okay, you didn't do that, but the way you approach the house burning, now that's your doing. So you could see it from afar and take a step back and be calm, or you could panic. And I'm not saying don't panic if your house is on fire, but once it burns, it's burned. There's no need to cry over a burnt house. And so to continue on that, I think this is a good application of that mindset and of that advice. Think about that like a dream, like a nightmare. You know that feeling when you wake up from a nightmare and it's real. It is real. If someone was next to the bed and said, do you want to bet your life that this is real? You would say yes, because your brain is telling you this is happening, your life is over. But then you take like 2 breaths and it's gone. It washes away. And you know that feeling of relief you get, this is achievable in your life. Because in reality, all of the problems, all of the things that are going to make you feel upset can be brushed away just like this. Treat them as if it was just a dream. Doesn't mean you're not going to work on it, but you're going to work on it and approach it with a clean mind, without the angst that accompany that type of issues in our everyday existence. How many are the pleasures that have been enjoyed by robbers, rakes, parricides, and tyrants? One simple question, and yet I think this one question debunks the entire notion of hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure for pleasure's sake. It's something that you still see to this day. I mean, I think hedonism is extremely well spread out, and it's extremely common in the modern world. But people don't call it hedonism, it's just living life now. The thing with this type of mindset is that from a purely biological standpoint, you could argue that it is perfectly valid. You could say, okay, the human body is wired to reward certain behaviors with shots of endorphins and dopamines that make you feel good. So why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you engage in, indulge in massive amounts of pleasures? At the end of the day, isn't that what life is about? Well, I have many rebuttals to that. First off, I would say that if you are just going to follow what biology states, you're nothing but an animal. You're not better than a beast, because you have completely forfeited your rational ability to exist as a conscious being. And that is just not what being a human is, in my opinion. We are so much better than that. We can elevate ourselves above that. And speaking about elevation, earthly pleasures are not to be shunned. I am not a Puritan. I'm not going to tell you, oh no, just never indulge. No. Take part, but never let that control you, and don't let that shackle you to the ground. If there is a food that you like eating because it makes you feel good, eat it, but don't eat it every single week. Don't let it become a habit. You need to be able to break free from it, because you never want to be a slave to anything or anyone. So you have to always be in control. You control the pleasure doesn't control you. If you catch yourself in your everyday life thinking, okay, man, I know it's not good what I'm going to do, but I just want that fix, that's bad. You know it's bad, right? That's not morals. It's not culture telling you that. It's something deeper in you that's telling you, okay, you're going to give up again. You know this is not good, and yet you do it. And that can be applied to many things, because in reality, if you take that mindset to the extreme and we're just going to chase pleasure, well then why don't you become obese? Why don't you eat until you just cannot move anymore? Why don't you have multiple sexual partners until you get a disease and you die? Why don't you do drugs? Why don't you take painkillers? Why don't you take opioids? I mean, if your goal is the quest of pleasure for pleasure's sake, then why don't you just take something that triggers immense amounts of pleasure until you die? Wouldn't that be fulfilling the human existence? Do you think that being somewhere in a ditch, choking on your puke because you injected black tar, do you think that this is the pinnacle of human life? I don't think so. And this is the reason why hedonism cannot work. It cannot exist, because hedonism is nihilism in reality, but not actual nihilism. The nihilism that people who don't understand Nietzsche think that it is, which is life as just walking through fog, with no goal, no ambition, because nothing truly matters. The pursuit of pleasure is essentially saying that since life doesn't matter, might as well just pig out and continue doing that until we croak. I deal with that, and Stoicism deals with that, and it's the reason why Marcus Aurelius says that, and why I ranted for so long is because he says, hey, you're going to chase pleasures. You know who also chases pleasures? Tyrants, criminals, all types of bad people. Do you want to live your life like them? No. So stay away from that path, be careful with pleasure. Don't become afraid of living a pleasurable life, but don't make it your goal either. And I'm just going to end on that. I might make a full video on the topic because it's really interesting, but be careful with comfort too. Comfort is good to an extent because it preserves our health and it allows us to recover. But there is a degree to it, just like with pleasure. When you get too comfortable and now you become weak because the comfort has made you soft. Be careful with that. He who has seen the present has seen all that either has been from all eternity or will be to all eternity, for all things are alike in kind and form. Connections with Musashi again. Know one thing, know 10,000 things. It might be my favorite application of the concepts from Bushido, from Stoicism, and it truly is just deductive reasoning. Once you have learned the concept, a new pathway of concept opens up. It's like a door. The door opens, but it's not just one hallway. Now, it's 10. And at the end of each is a door that opens to 10, and tens and tens and tens. It's the tree of knowledge. It's never ending. And this is the reason why, in reality, humans can get quite smart and wise even without the need to over-specialize. You don't need to know every single thing and read every single book. Read enough books and you will start knowing 30% of the content of a book you've never opened, just like here. We read about Bushido and we rediscover concepts that we already know in a book about Stoicism from a completely different culture, a completely different time period. What does that tell you? Human wisdom is from the source. All is connected, and since all is connected, we can tap into that and get knowledge directly from it. Consider frequently the connection of all things in the universe and their relation to each other. All things are in a manner intermingled with one another and are therefore mutually friendly. For one thing comes in due order after another by virtue of local movements and of the harmony and unity of the whole. Sums it up nicely. This is the source. It's all connected. We're connected with humans. We're connected with the world we live in. And a big danger of life is losing that connection. Either because you became an hermit or because you just lost track. And I think that the easiest way to do that is to forget who you are. Once you forget who you are, you forget your roots, it's just, life loses its savor because you're not living it anymore. Because you don't know. The person who is supposed to be piloting this entire experience doesn't even know their real name. And by real name, I don't mean the name your parents gave you. I mean what is truly in you, in your heart. It's not a sound, it's not a name in any language known to man. It's an emotion, and that emotion is stored in you. You can share it with others, but the pure, the complete library of everything you are, only you can know that. And you need to know that intently and be proud of that, because it's who you are. It's your core. And this is the core that is tapped to the source. The rest is just illusion. And I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.